It began on a quiet June night in Brentwood, California, a night so still that no one expected history to crack open beneath it. By dawn, two bodies would lie bleeding outside a condominium on Bundy Drive. One of them was Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of one of America's most beloved sports icons. The other, a young man named Ron Goldman, a waiter whose only mistake was returning a pair of forgotten glasses. The murders would ignite one of the most shocking criminal trials in American history, a spectacle of fame, violence, and racial tension that would divide a nation and redefine the meaning of guilt in the public eye. Nicole Brown Simpson was 35. She'd once been the golden girl of California, blonde, smiling, effortlessly radiant. Friends said she had a kindness that could disarm anyone, but those close to her also saw the shadows that had begun to form. Her marriage to O.J. Simpson, the legendary running back turned Hollywood celebrity, had ended in divorce 2 years earlier after years of alleged abuse. Neighbors had seen police cars outside their home before. Calls had been made. But like so many stories of power and fear, it was easier to believe that things had calmed down, that time had moved on. On June 12, 1994, time stopped for Nicole. That evening, Nicole went to her daughter's dance recital with O.J. and their children. It seemed civil, even normal. Afterward, she and her family had dinner at Mezzaluna, an Italian restaurant in Brentwood. Ron Goldman worked there as a waiter. Later that night, Nicole's mother realized she had left her glasses at the restaurant. Ron offered to drop them off on his way home, a simple act of kindness that would cost him his life. At around 10:15 p.m., the quiet neighborhood of Bundy Drive turned into the scene of a horror film. Neighbors heard the sound of barking dogs, Nicole's Akita, frantic and howling. When a nearby resident followed the dog, he found a trail of blood leading to Nicole's gate. The bodies were discovered just past midnight. Nicole lay collapsed at the bottom of her front steps, nearly decapitated, her throat slashed so deeply it almost severed her head. Ron Goldman's body was sprawled nearby, stabbed multiple times, his hands slashed as if he had tried desperately to fight off his attacker. Blood was everywhere, on the walkway, the gate, the ground. It looked like a massacre performed in silence. When detectives arrived, they immediately noticed a single bloody glove lying near the bodies. A matching glove would later be found at O.J. Simpson's home. But before that discovery, police went looking for the man himself. At 4:30 a.m., Detective Ron Phillips called O.J. to tell him that Nicole had been killed. Simpson's first words weren't those of shock or disbelief. According to reports, he simply asked, "Who killed her?" By sunrise, detectives were at O.J.'s Rockingham estate, a massive property surrounded by gates and hedges. They saw a white Ford Bronco parked outside with what appeared to be blood smeared on the door. No one answered the intercom. Eventually, Detective Mark Furman jumped the wall to gain entry, fearing someone might be hurt inside. He found another glove behind the guest house, identical to the one found at Nicole's home. And that was the moment the narrative began to twist. Within hours, the once beloved O.J. Simpson became the prime suspect in a double homicide. O.J. claimed he'd been home, sleeping, but evidence was stacking up fast. Blood drops were found leading from his car to the entrance of his house. A bloody sock with Nicole's DNA was discovered in his bedroom. A cut on his left hand, unexplained, matched the night of the murders. Still, the LAPD wanted to bring him in quietly, to let him turn himself in. The plan fell apart spectacularly on June 17th. That morning, O.J. was scheduled to surrender at 11 a.m. Instead, he disappeared. When police arrived at his estate, his friend and former teammate Al Cowlings told them O.J. had taken off with a gun. What followed was one of the most surreal spectacles ever broadcast live on television. The slow-speed chase of a white Ford Bronco across Los Angeles freeways trailed by dozens of police cars and watched by an estimated 95 million viewers. Inside the vehicle, O.J. sat in the back seat, gun in hand, threatening to end his life. The city held its breath as he finally returned home, emerging hours later to surrender peacefully. In his pocket, police found a fake beard, a passport, and $8,750 in cash. The trial that followed became a cultural earthquake. Officially, it was the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson. Unofficially, it was America on trial. Its celebrity obsession, its racial wounds, its fractured sense of justice. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, believed they had an airtight case. DNA evidence linked O.J. to the crime scene. The gloves matched. The footprints matched his size. The blood in his car and on his driveway matched Nicole and Ron. Statistically, the odds of that DNA belonging to someone else were astronomical. "If you follow the evidence," Clark said in her opening statement, "it leads only to one person, O.J. Simpson." The defense, however, had something even more powerful: a story. Led by Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, and a young Robert Kardashian, the Dream Team turned the trial into theater. They painted the LAPD as corrupt and racist, arguing that Simpson was framed by a department desperate to convict a famous black man. The star of their argument was Detective Mark Furman, the same officer who had found the bloody glove. Recordings later surfaced of Furman using racial slurs, destroying his credibility and planting seeds of doubt in the jury's mind. "If you can't trust the police," Cochran argued, "how can you trust the evidence they collect?" The courtroom drama unfolded daily on live television. Cameras caught every tear, every argument, every raised eyebrow. O.J. sat between his attorneys, often calm, occasionally breaking into smiles that felt rehearsed. Nicole's family sat across the room, silent and broken. When the glove evidence was presented, prosecutors asked Simpson to try it on in front of the jury. He struggled, forcing his fingers through the stiff leather. They appeared too small. Cochran seized the moment that would define the trial. "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Those words echoed through America like a chant. What had begun as a murder case became a televised event, a circus of celebrity, race, and manipulation. Outside the courtroom, opinions split sharply. Many white Americans believed O.J. was guilty. Many black Americans saw him as a victim of systemic racism. The country wasn't just divided, it was bleeding in two. Behind the headlines, the science remained clear. The DNA evidence was overwhelming. The odds that the blood on O.J.'s sock came from anyone other than Nicole Brown. Simpson were 1 in 9.7 billion. The footprints found at the crime scene matched a rare pair of size 12 Bruno Magli shoes that O.J. had denied owning, until photos later surfaced of him wearing them. Yet by then public sentiment had already shifted. The defense had done what few could. They'd turned evidence into suspicion. After 133 days of testimony and 9 months of media chaos, the jury finally reached a verdict. On October 3, 1995, O.J. Simpson stood in the courtroom, eyes fixed ahead, as the clerk read the decision. "We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder." Gasps filled the air. Nicole's mother wept. O.J. mouthed the words, "Thank you," to the jury. The nation exploded. For some, it was justice at last. For others, it was the collapse of truth itself. But the story didn't end there. In 1997, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman filed a civil lawsuit against O.J. Simpson for wrongful death. This time, the courtroom was quieter, the cameras fewer, but the evidence no less powerful. In civil court, the burden of proof was lower. Preponderance of the evidence, rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury found O.J. responsible for both deaths, awarding the families $33.5 million in damages. It was a symbolic victory. The families would see almost none of that money. Simpson later moved to Florida, living off pensions protected from seizure, playing golf, and giving occasional interviews. He remained defiant, claiming he was still searching for the real killers. The case lingered in American memory like a wound that refused to heal. It had exposed the fragile trust between the public and law enforcement, the dark power of celebrity, and the way media could shape justice. It wasn't just about 2 lives lost, it was about a system on trial. Years later, in 2007, O.J. Simpson would once again face handcuffs, this time in Las Vegas, accused of armed robbery and kidnapping over a dispute involving sports memorabilia. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In 2008, he was sentenced to 33 years in prison. Justice, it seemed, had a long memory. He served 9 before being released on parole in 2017. But for those who remember June 12, 1994, the image remains. Nicole Brown Simpson lying beneath a crimson moonlight, Ron Goldman collapsed beside her, their blood soaking into the pavement of a quiet Los Angeles street. 2 people caught in the crossfire of obsession, jealousy, and rage. 2 lives that never should have intersected that way. In the end, the O.J. Simpson case wasn't just a crime story. It was a mirror. It reflected our fascination with fame, our fear of injustice, and our endless appetite for spectacle. It asked a question that still haunts us. What does it take for truth to survive in a world that loves a good story more than it loves justice? Sometimes the verdict isn't the end. It's just the beginning of the silence that follows. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.